All right, next up, picking at 111, we are looking at the Norwegian Moneymakers. I should mention that Ortner, which is my last name, we are mostly Norwegian. About a good 60-75% of my bloodlines are Norwegian, so I'm pulling for the Moneymakers, that's for sure. I will say I need to be pulling for him. His record has actually decreased the last 3 years. He has some holes on his roster, but he has the 111, and hopefully he can grab a pretty good player there. We'll have a look at his roster now. At his quarterback spot, he has Carson Palmer and Brandon Weeden. Their age is not that far apart. Oh, cue the Brandon Weeden joke. Carson Palmer he's going to Arizona, and he has a good chance to actually do rather well, do the same thing he was doing in Oakland anyway, except he's going to be winging it to Larry Fitzgerald, so there's actually room to believe his numbers could be decent. I'm not advocating him as a quarterback one, but he could actually have a surprisingly decent fantasy year with maybe 4,000 yards and 27 touchdowns or so, and that's not really all that bad. Brandon Weeden, I don't think he was as putrid as people realize as people think that he was last year. He wasn't actually that bad, and he actually gave the Browns a little bit of a spark on offense. Josh Gordon had a good year. Richardson was rolling. I actually like the direction Cleveland's heading, especially with all the coaching changes. They brought in some actual good football coaches for a change instead of just random Mike Holmgren experimental garbage. So I think he could really use a quarterback upgrade, but he's not in horrid shape. At running back, he has Reggie Bush and Sproles, both PPR guys, but both people that are better suited a little further down your depth chart. Reggie is going into a very good situation in Detroit, probably the best place he could have landed out of the whole 32 teams. Detroit is a good fit for him. He could have a running back 1 year, but we need to remember he is Reggie Bush, and while he's been generally healthy the last 2 years, the 4 or 5 years prior to that, he was not generally healthy. I would be worried about him as my running back one. And Darren Sproles, on the other hand, has been a PPR asset, but he's not young either. So both of them have question marks. Then he has the handcuffs to those two men in Mikel LaShore and Pierre Thomas. Thomas, I think, is nothing more than a desperation flex play in any given week. And LaShore, he's a really hard guy to gauge. He actually had a decent statistical year last year, but he was a plotter, and he's just hard to get behind, especially now that they've brought in Bush. Although he is another year removed from his Achilles injury, so maybe LaShore will actually be explosive this year. He wasn't really last year. And running backs, he's looking at needing some help there too. Andre Johnson is his number one receiver, and Andre Johnson is a number one receiver, so that fits out. He is definitely getting long in the tooth, so he could be looking at a replacement with his picks. He also has Sidney Rice, Rod Streeter, Donnie Avery, and Brandon Lloyd. All four of them are more bench depth guys, so he could use a wide receiver as well. The Moneymakers could use some help at all three of the spots so far. And we'll look on down at tight end, where he's got Dustin Keller, who moved over to Miami, and is actually a pretty good fit there. I think he could be a solid bounce-back kind of guy. I like Keller in Miami. I think he could surprise people and be a top 8 tight end this year. Zach Miller over in Seattle, you just never know with Seattle tight ends, because I remember last year they brought in Kellen Winslow, and you just don't know with Seattle. What happened to Kellen Winslow anyway? I think he's just walking around without a job. He has fallen quite a bit. Anyway, I'll get back on task. Yeah, I like Keller. I like his top receiver in Andre Johnson. His first 2 running backs are startable but questionable, and then he needs help at QB. So with the 111 pick, he really needs to hit on it, and I would have a hard time, advocating one single player to pick here. I think his dream would be that somebody slides at any position. I would take just hope that someone slides. Hope that, you guys just didn't like Eddie Lacy and you let him drop. Or maybe Justin Hunter, he'd be a great fit if he slid there. Or Keenan Allen. I wouldn't completely rule out a quarterback, although I wouldn't advocate E.J. Manuel here, and I think it's an overdraft for Geno Smith, but he doesn't have a pick later. So I think I'd probably be looking at best receiver or running back available. maybe by some strange chance, you have one of the big four backs or the big five wide receivers fall. If you have any of them there, if you have Ball, Bell, Bernard, or, oh gosh, who's the fourth one? Ball, Bell, Bernard, or Lacey there, you have to take them. If any of those four make it, or any of the five wide receivers. That's Hopkins, Hunter, Allen, Austin, or Patterson. If any of them are there, you have to take him. That being said, that is 9 players, and there are 10 players that are going to get picked in front of him. So the odds are all 9 of those guys are going to be gone, and then he's going to be left with the scraps, most likely of Robert Woods or Marcus Wheaton or one of the quarterbacks, possibly Tyler Eifert. I don't think I would take Eifert. He wouldn't be on my radar here because he actually has a decent tight end, I think. I think you need more help at wide receiver. I would consider, if the chips fall like they probably will, Marcus Wheaton would be a guy that I'd like there. I would like Lattimore as well. So hopefully the Moneymakers can grab somebody here, because as it stands, unfortunately, he's probably looking at not having a playoff berth and a top 3 or 4 pick in 2014. So I would hold on to your future picks, Norwegian Moneymakers, and hope for the best with this 111, and hopefully maybe you'll get a cornerstone kind of player that can turn it around. Good luck to you, sir.